Hello and welcome, and you guys, welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be going through the 1122 comment section and just see what people are talking about and have a little discussion. So yeah, with that being said, let's get right into it. Alright, so as per usual, we are going to be sorting this by the top comments, and then eventually we will be going to the newest comments as well. So the first one we have, the most liked comment, says, "Notice that when Mars was alone, he finally got to sit down despite his punishment." Yeah, I forgot to mention that in the video, but this is the first time we have ever seen Mars sitting down. And in a weird way, I can't help but correlate this to the SBS in the recent volume, where somebody asked Oda, why does Mars always stand in the Gorosei room? And Oda had a little bit of a gaggy comment, you know, he was kind of joking about it. He said the reason why Mars was always standing is because it's like when a kid has to do his homework and they're just always running late. So that was Oda's response, and I think because of that, he decided to finally make Mars sit down, which I thought was pretty funny. The next comment says, "I think Mars got knocked back so far away that he went out of the range of the summoning area." And the comment below says, 100%, someone said he perfectly got knocked out all the way to Mirage Raw, which would be so damn embarrassing considering he has wings. Saturn, 100% has like a 10-mile radius around him, and if the people he summoned go outside of it, they get unsummoned. And I don't think this is a bad idea. This isn't where I originally went with my thought process of why Mars is back at the Gorosei room, but I've seen this idea being floated around, and I really do enjoy it. I think the only problem, not even a problem, but it kind of sucks that we never got a clear distinction as to why the Gorosei went back home, right? Like, at least for the other Gorosei, like, oh, they got blown back, and then what? Like, did the hockey send them back to Mirage Raw? Was the summoning circle undone because of the hockey? Or is it because Saturn got injured and he was the guy who summoned them? They all got sent back? Or is it a range thing? I'm not exactly too sure how I feel about it quite yet. But as far as the range idea, I think that could be the case for Mars, but it wouldn't be the case for Warcody, Jupiter, or Venus, since they were well within the island, and they didn't get blown back super far, from what I could tell. So yeah, it's a weird one, and, you know, Oda's kind of keeping those cards close to his chest. We still don't know what they are exactly, right? People are still debating whether or not these guys are actual devils, or just simply have devil fruits. Like, there's so much about these guys we just don't know about, and Oda has not given us any hints whatsoever. All in all, I really do like this idea, and I could see this being the case. And once the Straw Hats learn about this, I wonder what it'll be like afterwards if we were to fight them again under these circumstances. Would Luffy simply look at the guys and say, hey, guys, simply drag them away, and then they'll just be sent back home? I think that'd be a pretty funny imagery, right? Like, imagine Luffy and the gang just trying to push the Gorosei off of the island so that they would go back to Mirage Raw. Alright, so the next most liked comment says, "Coby, stop the Blackbeard pirates and save Garp. No. Stop Buggy to stop the bounty posters on Marines. No. Stop Luffy, his friend who saved and helped him. Yes." And yeah, it does sound really silly when you contextualize it like this. And I agree, this is where I originally went as well. You know, I was like, wait, Coby, you know, Garf's about to die. You know, what about Buggy and Crossguild and how they're throwing the world into chaos? I was like, why stop Luffy out of all people? And, you know, after sitting with it for a day, my mind kind of came to the conclusion that Coby doesn't necessarily want to fight Luffy. He simply wants to find the One Piece before Luffy, which would in turn mean that Coby is ending Luffy's dream, or halting Luffy's dream, right? If Coby gets to Laugh Tale first and he acquires the One Piece, then yeah, Luffy's dream would be in the mud. So I could see that being the route Coby meant, and if I'm being quite honest, I hope that's what Coby meant, right? Because it's hard to imagine Coby fighting Luffy right now, or even Blackbeard or Buggy. Like, he just wouldn't win those fights in my eyes, at least not yet. You know, I've said it time and time again, but I truly do believe that Coby is the Garp of the next generation. He will be the Marine that gives Luffy the most trouble by the end of story, right? After Akainu and after all the Admirals, I think Coby is right there. He will be Luffy's main adversary. But notice I said end of story, right? Like, Coby still needs to go through a lot of training and growth before it gets to any of the Yonko's levels. And that is the main reason why I think Coby is going to go after the 4 road poneglyphs and find Laugh Tale, simply because he can't beat any of these factions outright. So the best way to stop all of these pirates dead in their tracks is to simply find the One Piece. And you gotta remember, by finding the One Piece, not only is he ripping away hope from the pirates, but in tandem, he's saving the world, right? Vegapunk said, hey, whoever finds the One Piece, the world lies in their hands. The world is sinking. You know, oceans are rising. The One Piece is critical. So I think that is why Coby directed his attention away from Blackbeard and Buggy and more towards the One Piece. And the thing with Blackbeard is that Blackbeard, we don't really know what his goal is yet. He wants to be the king of Hachinosu. So as far as the world aspect goes, Coby doesn't have to focus on him. Buggy, yes, he's throwing the whole marine system into chaos by putting bounty posters on him, but he's not all about the One Piece, so, you know, we can ignore him. The only pirate that Coby knows of right now that is actively going after the One Piece is Luffy. And that's why I think he singled out Luffy out of everyone in the last chapter. Or at least that's how I'm kind of trying to rationalize it. But yeah, as it stands right now, I do think Sword is going to turn their attention towards the One Piece, and we're going to see their adventure. And I'm kind of excited to see how it goes, because as it stands, I said this a second ago, but I'll say it again, you know, even thinking outside of Coby, you know, thinking of the entirety of Sword, I still don't see them as a massive powerhouse that any faction after the One Piece should be that afraid of. When you think about the heaviest hitters they have, it's really just Coby and X-Drake. And X-Drake gets a really bad rap because of his performance on Onigashima. So realistically, it's just Coby, you know, like they got Coby, Hibari, Helmeppo, Kujaku, Prince Groose, and that's it. You know, like people want to throw Smoker and Tashigi in there, but they weren't listed as Sword members yet. So, you know, that one is still up in the air. So, yeah, I think Sword needs help. I think they all need to train up a little bit more. And if they want to be a real competitor in the race for the One Piece, I think they have to avoid a lot of these major battles. But yeah, I would love to hear what you guys think about this. How do you feel about Coby now that a few days have passed? Do you think he's simply going after the One Piece, or no, do you think he truly wants to fight Luffy in a 1v1 scenario? All right, so the next two comments are kind of related in a way, right? We got two comments back to back about Emu and Joyboy's hockey. The first one says, Emu got the Green Bull treatment. And I would add on to that all of the Gorosei, minus Mars of course, got the Green Bull treatment. Because when you think about the Green Bull treatment, not only is it the crazy conquers hockey from a distance, but Shanks also managed to turn Green Bull from his big broccoli Logia form into his human form. And that's exactly what we saw with the Gorosei, who witnessed Joyboy's hockey. They were all in their demon yokai forms 1 minute, and then they reverted back to humans the next. And then Emu just, I don't know, we still don't know how it happened, right? How did Emu sense Joyboy's hockey? We have no clue, but one way or another, it happened. Whether it's insane observation and he could just sense what's happening on Egghead, or maybe it is simply that he is connected to all of the Gorosei, so when they got hit, he got hit. Or maybe it's like a whiff of bad air, right? The Gorosei came back home, and since they got sent back home because of Joyboy's hockey, Emu, who is in the same castle, could just sense it in the area. Not too sure again, like I said, Oda's keeping a lot of how the Gorosei and Emu works under wraps. But yeah, Emu did get the Green Bull treatment. The one under it says, people really forget that Muzan had PTSD towards Yoriichi, while still being the single strongest entity in the universe. This isn't a bad thing. This is simply a Joyboy feat. And you know what? I completely agree with this. But I will also stick to my guns and say that even if this is the case, he still lost a little bit of aura in my eyes, right? Like, it's not a bad thing. He can always get it back later. But, you know, he simply dropped down to his knees. He screamed. He was like, oh, Joyboy. You could see the visible shake. And since he's a silhouette, it looks even goofier than normal. You know, like, I feel like if we saw what Emu actually looked like, and if we saw the face and all the emotion, maybe it would be a little bit different. But it's just like the shaking shadow is really goofy. You gotta admit that. But yeah, like I said, I'm still expecting good things from Emu. The way I rationalize this as well is that Joyboy was most likely his #1 opponent. You know, think about Akainu and Aokiji, right? Like, no matter how you spin it, that was a tough battle. So I feel like Emu might have been the same way, you know, like Joyboy was just his toughest battle. So sensing the hockey just made him lose his crap for a minute. But of course, it now makes me wonder how close the battle actually was, right? Like, did Emu just win by a hair? And that's why thinking about Joyboy, like, really puts the fear of God in him? Or did Emu have to play underhandedly? And that was the only way to beat Joyboy? We're not exactly sure. And of course, like, I say this for a lot of things, but I just always have to throw it out there. But we just don't really know a lot. So everything is just speculation. But yeah, on to the next comment, though. What do we got? Emu screaming from getting Conqueror's Haki back shots 800 years ago from the past is crazy. It's crazy that that's the very next comment. And Joyboy says, did you pray today, Emu? Alright, so the next comment says, Coby singling out Luffy is such a parallel to Garp going after Roger during God Valley. Yes, yes, yes. I've always been a big fan that history in One Piece will repeat itself. One of those events that I think will happen with is God Valley. I mean, we have a lot of candidates here, right? I mean, the Figarland bloodline's still out there. You know, Saturn and the Gorosei are still around. We got Blackbeard being the new version of Roxy Zebek. We got Luffy, we got Coby. I think it's bound to happen. And if Coby does truly chase after Luffy, I could see God Valley happening. And then, of course, we could get a nice Luffy and Coby team up, which I think is bound to happen at some point, right? Like, I mean, Coby, Luffy, yes, they're on opposite sides, but they're both fighting for, quote, good. Luffy doesn't really see it that way, but let's be real. You know, Luffy doesn't want to be called the hero, but on every single island, he has performed heroic acts. The craziest thing Luffy has done is maybe just eat a little bit too much food, right? So yeah, I could totally see Coby and Luffy teaming up and taking down whatever adversity faces both of them, or at least threatens the greater scope of the world. So below that, it says, even Oda's fanboy MHA author grew up and finished his manga. Oda is still cooking. Old Big 3 era passes, the new Big 3 era passes, it doesn't matter. Oda is still doing the Goda thing. I respect that. Yeah, and I bet that's really lonely too, right? Like, since, I mean, granted, I'm not too sure how the Shonen Jump offices work, but I like to imagine Oda is like the one guy still at the office and he's just watching all of his coworkers cycle through. It kind of reminds me of that old saying, it's very lonely at the top. Alright, so the next comment says, we need Bon Clay in the final battle because of Devon's duplication of the Gorosei. He can equally do the same thing with any of them he touches as well. I cannot wait. Yeah, we need Bon Clay to break out. I don't know if you guys remember this, but back when Film Red was originally being pitched, before it was even called Film Red, one of the original ideas was to have Bon Clay escape impelled down. I'm not even joking. Hopefully, if I do my due diligence, I'll put some proof up here. But yeah, you know, Oda is thinking about Bon Clay still. The fact that impelled down was shown in this chapter and the fact that they heard the message just makes me believe even more that Bon Clay, or at least an impelled down escape, will happen very soon. And one thing I want to throw out there is that we should pay really close attention to every single impelled down panel we get from here on out. Because you have to remember that Bon Clay, like you said, is able to replicate anyone he touches. We have to remember that Bon Clay has touched Magellan, and he's touched Hannibal, and probably many other impelled down guards. So whenever there's an impelled down guard, or warden or vice warden on screen, you always have to look at those panels with a little bit of skepticism. Because while it could be Hannibal or Magellan, it could also be Bon Clay in disguise. So if we get a panel in the future where an impelled down guard or Magellan is like, hey, time to move you prisoners, or hey, give me the keys for that cell, there's a good chance that's Bon Clay. All I gotta say, right? And we know that Bon Clay's mimicry lasts a good amount of time. Like, dude, Bon Clay touched Zoro back in Alabasta, and when we met him at Impelled Down, Bon Clay was originally disguised as Zoro. So yeah, we know that his mimicry is still working as we speak, and if Bon Clay wants to break out, I feel like it will be super, super, super easy. Alright, so the next comment says, I don't think Emu was weak. He just seemed shocked that Joyboy was able to pull that off. We also got no indication of the tone he said Joyboy in. If anything, Emu's attendant seemed the most shocked, as it does not seem likely that Emu responds that way often. And yeah, I agree. And again, I want to reiterate this. I hope people don't conflate what I say is aura with weakness or power, right? I still think Emu is super powerful. I even said it back then. I said, hey, Emu, regardless of the latest chapter, was still able to almost kill Sabo, right? Like, he pierced Sabo with a singular attack, no name whatsoever, and Sabo was at death's door. You know, like, Emu is powerful. He just seems kind of silly as a shaking silhouette that's dropping to his knees. You know, that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. So the next comment, though, says, I may be reaching, but I want to believe Elbaf is going to be a mini training arc, not just for the Straw Hats, but for Coby and other potential endgame characters as well. It would give Usopp time to become a great warrior. Frankie will learn from Lilith, And seeing as Emeth had giant clothing on, there has to be something Luffy could do to reach Joy Boy's levels of Conqueror's Haki. It would also give Blackbeard time to follow up on the info on the weapons. Man, I'm very hyped for One Piece these next few months, and I completely agree. I don't agree with Coby. I know. I said Coby needs a training arc, but when you think about the world of One Piece and how it's moving, I don't think there's time for Coby to stop and take a rest. For the Straw Hats, I don't believe there is time to stop and take a rest either, but I feel like I could at least reach for some straws with Elbaf, right? So we know the Thousand Sunny, Frankie repaired it shortly after Wano, after they fell from the heights, and he's like, hey guys, it's Atomwood, but you know, it still takes some damage here and there. And then we just fell from another Sky Island just last chapter. So maybe the Thousand Sunny will need some repairs, and if it does need repairs, Elbaf would be the perfect place for that, because that might be the home of Atomwood. So maybe that's what stops us in our tracks for a little bit. Outside of that, maybe Robin wants to stop and read the books of Ohara, right? Maybe they'll take a week, maybe they'll take a month. We're not too sure. But just with the way the story is moving right now, I feel like there's so many problems around us, whether it's the world sinking, a lot of pirates going after the One Piece. Like, there's just so much happening. And even Garp, right? If Luffy hears the news about Garp, we don't know how he's going to react yet. Will he go after Blackbeard? Will he not? Will he look at the newspaper and say, oh, you know, my grandpa has his own adventures. Well, let's just leave him to it. Like, we're not too sure how the world will affect the Straw Hats' prerogative. You know, will they have a fire under their ass and want to do things more quickly? Or will they still stop and smell the roses? Personally, I hope this happens. I hope we stop and train. I think training arcs are fantastic. I do love it when One Piece takes its time. You know, we flesh out the characters a little bit. We have some fun. And with how long we've been waiting for Elbaf, over 1,000 chapters, mind you, because we met the Giants back in like chapter 115. But yeah, like I do think that if we were to stop and take some time on an island, I think Elbaf would be the greatest time for that. But like I said, the one thing I'm worried about is how other pirate groups will progress while the Straw Hats take their time here, right? Like, think about Shanks. Shanks potentially has 3 of Kid's Road poneglyphs. That's still a question that's up in the air. I think Shanks has the poneglyphs, but if that's the case, he just needs 1 more, and then he can go to Laugh-Tale. Blackbeard, if he took Law's poneglyphs, he has 3. He just needs 1 more. And if Caribou shows up today and tells Blackbeard, hey, Fishman Island and Wano have ancient weapons, he's just gonna go there and tear down those walls and take the weapons, right? And then think about Coby, Crosskill, like, so many people are gunning for the One Piece that I feel like if the Straw Hats were to take some time, like a month or a week or what have you, I'm afraid that other pirates will be like right there at the very end of the finish line. So for me, at least, that's kind of just the one thing I'm afraid of. And I'm actually excited to see how Oda tackles that problem. If the Straw Hats do train up here, how will Oda stall off the other pirate groups? Maybe the other pirate groups will fight while we're here on Elbaf. Maybe they will stall each other, right? That's always a possibility. Blackbeard progresses, Shanks progresses, and then eventually they just end up clashing. And then while they're clashing, it gives the Straw Hats time to build themselves up. Or maybe the same happens with Crossguild and Coby. I think there are potential options to stop other pirate groups without the Straw Hats being directly involved. And I'd be all about it. All right, so this comment, I've seen a lot of this. It says, from the silhouette, I did the math and you are wrong. Joyboy size is actually the size of Kuma, Big Mom, Kaido, and or Whitebeard. There's a possibility that Joyboy is a buccaneer. So, the panel, okay, first up, One Piece sizes have been crazy inconsistent. You know, like, sizes in One Piece, you gotta take them with a grain of salt. But the thing with this is that what people talk about when they say I did the math is that they go back to the very first time when we met Emeth. So at least from what I've seen, this is the panel right here that people use when they try to compare Joyboy size to Luffy's size. They're like, hey, look at how small Luffy is, right? Luffy is puny compared to Emeth. And I agree, Luffy looks really small right here. But with that being said, let's go to a more recent chapter. This is chapter 1020. And we see Luffy bouncing up and down, and he's right beside Emeth. And it's like, okay, you know, Luffy looks a little bit bigger here, right? Like I said, sizes in One Piece, kind of inconsistent. Which now brings us to chapter 1022, where we see this shot of Joyboy and Emeth. So I go between these 2 panels right here. And if you compare these 2, they're like the same size. Joyboy, Luffy, They're like identical when put side by side to Emeth right here. So that is why I believe that Joyboy is in fact a human. And then we also have to remember that Emeth verbatim says that you look just like him. You look like Joyboy, which I think is a strange thing to say about Luffy if Joyboy is indeed a buccaneer or a bigger character, right? If Joyboy is a buccaneer or a giant, and then Emeth looks at Luffy and he's like, hey, Luffy, you look just like him. And it's like, wait, how's that possible? So yeah, because of these panels, I do think that Joyboy is in fact a human. Of course, people also look at this panel right here where Joyboy's like massive, but this is also a back shot of Joyboy. You know, you gotta think about the perspective when you think about some of these panels. And again, like I said, sizing in One Piece has been inconsistent. You gotta remember, back when Emeth first got up on Agate Island, the Marines were like, hey, like this giant, like he's bigger than all the other giants, and you could see him, you know, peering through the island at every point in time, and then you go to other chapters, and Emeth is just missing. Sizing in One Piece isn't an easy thing to scale. I can see why people still want to believe this theory, but at this point, I'm not there. I don't think there's a high possibility that he's a buccaneer. I don't think there's a lot of reasons why he would be a buccaneer either. You know, one thing people go back to is the fact that Kuma's dad, Clap, knew about the Sun God Nika myth, but even then, I don't think that speaks much. I mean, thinking back to all of the silhouettes we've gotten of Joyboy, whether it's him versus, you know, the 20 Kings, whether that's from whose perspective, like, we've always seen the same human figure doing the dance. It's never been like this big burly guy with the crazy torso doing it. I think Nika could be a giant for sure, but as far as Joyboy himself, no. I don't think he's a buccaneer. I don't think he's a giant. I think he's either a human or a brand new race-tribe that we haven't seen yet that hails from the ancient kingdom. All right, so the next comment is from Black Tootherson, and he says, people talking about Imu getting rid of Saturn for failing, but he actually did by far more on Agate Island than any other Gorosei and is about to acquire the Mother Flame. I'm gonna do you one better. He's getting the Mother Flame, he's getting Punk Records, York, and Emeth. Yo, Saturn's got a lot of W's under his belt. Of course, a lot of things are because he put things in motion with Bonnie and Kuma, but, you know, you gotta look at it at the end of the day. What do we have? We have a lot of W's. The Gorosei got everything they wanted out of Agate Island. Could they have stopped the message earlier? Yes. You know, I do still think Imu will discipline them, but as far as getting rid of Saturn, I don't think so. Right, especially now in the final saga where, you know, all these pirate groups are rising up, all the Marines and the Revs are rising up. I think now would be the worst time to get rid of somebody like Saturn. You want all the people under your command. So yeah, suffice to say, I don't think Saturn is getting the boot. And I don't know, like, I feel like as far as Imu goes, now that he's gotten hit with that Joyboy PTSD, maybe he's going to be very forgiving and understanding of the Gorosei, right? Like, imagine the Gorosei come back home and Imu was like, guys, you messed up. But, you know, it was Joyboy we're talking about, right? Like, hey, you lost, but that was because of Joyboy's hockey. Like, what are you going to do about it? You know, if somebody knows what that's like, it's Imu. So I like to imagine he'd simply just give him a nice slap on the wrist, you know, hey, do better next time, but I understand. So below that says, bro, the hat that Imu has might be the sun gods, as Vegapunk talked about when he said Joyboy, who has powers like the sun god from Elbaf, and yes, I agree. And I do believe that the straw hat, if not Joyboy's, is actually the original sun god Nika's straw hat. And I think that would perfectly surmise why the straw hat is also in a freezer. Now that we know that objects from the past can hold haki and or power within them, maybe Sun God Nika's straw hat emits heat waves and it's that powerful to where Imu had to put it in a freezer. You know, maybe freezing that straw hat was the only way to suppress the sun god's heat. That is kind of where I'm at right now. And now that we also have a distinction that Joyboy and Nika were two different people, Sun God Nika could easily be the giant in the situation that people are looking for, and then Joyboy is just a regular guy who had the Nika powers, just like Luffy. So yeah, that's how I feel right now, and hey, if we ever whip out that giant straw hat from Marie Raw out of that freezer, I'm expecting some crazy things are gonna happen, right? Like, imagine if Sun God Nika put his hockey in that hat. rip it open, bam, the whole world is nuked, right? All right, so on to the next comment. This one says, maybe the vision Charlie had wasn't Luffy setting Fishman Island on fire, but instead was Katarina Devon posing as Luffy. And the bottom comment says, been thinking about this since Devon pulled up at Egghead. And I completely agree again. You know, this isn't a bias, by the way. I'm not looking for comments that I agree with and I'm pulling them up. I swear I'm scrolling down the list and just getting the main ones that catch my eye. But yes, this one I think is massive. You know, Devon going to Fishman Island, even going to Wano, posed as Luffy, could do so much damage. And not to mention, but that would also be the best way for Devon to trick, you know, Shirahoshi to coming above land. Because when you think about it, Shirahoshi is in her element at Fishman Island. Brother, you try to kidnap Shirahoshi, Sea Kings will burst a bubble, break your ship, and you're dead. Unless Van Augur can teleport his crew from the bottom of the ocean to the very top and get them out of there safe and soundly, they're gonna die to the Sea Kings. It's that simple. So the only way to realistically get Shirahoshi out of Fishman Island is, one, you have a knife at her throat, and if the Sea Kings come, you kill her, or two, you simply trick Shirahoshi into leaving Fishman Island. If Luffy were to show up down there and say, hey, Shirahoshi, let's go on an adventure. Or maybe you say, hey, Shirahoshi, I know a great meat store above land, and you really need to try it out, right? Like, I feel like Luffy, or sorry, I said Luffy. I think Katarina Devon could easily trick Shirahoshi, and that could be the easiest and safest way to get an ancient weapon under your belt. And then the Blackbeard Pirates can simply come back and destroy the island. You know, I think it's that simple. But yeah, I love this idea a lot, and I am having a lot of fun thinking about the ways that Blackbeard and its group can just run the gauntlet around the world, and I don't think it would be that crazy. The Blackbeard Pirates have been very, very methodical, and as far as time management goes, I think they're quite honestly the best pirate group out there. You know, when you think about how much they've accomplished in such a little time, the Blackbeard Pirates are those guys. All right, so the next comment says, really makes you wonder, how the heck did Joyboy die? If his hockey was that crazy strong, like what happened? Was he getting jumped for 7 days and nights and lost because of exhaustion or what? And yeah, I think he was getting jumped for 7 days and nights. You know, as goofy as that sounds, we have to remember, Imu got 20 kingdoms. Kings and queens. He got 20 kingdoms together to combat Joyboy. Imagine, dude, can you think of 20 kingdoms in One Piece? I promise you, a majority of people can't. Because the Straw Hats have not even visited 20 kingdoms, right? So imagining that force against one single pirate group and or kingdom, yeah, it makes sense why Joyboy got wiped. We can't just imagine Imu alone on that battlefield versus Joyboy. It's Imu and 19 homeboys behind him, along with all of their countries, you know? So yeah, I think Joyboy had a lot of opposition, and that does also make you wonder, why did 20 kingdoms get together and fight Joyboy? Was Joyboy truly a good person? I think it's somewhere in the middle. I mean, it's kind of like what Vegapunk said, right? We don't know enough about history. We can't exactly say who's good or who's bad yet. So I think once we hit that Void Century flashback, I don't think Imu, the kingdoms, the Celestial Dragons, or Joyboy, I don't think anybody's going to be a distinctive bad person. I think it's going to be like a misunderstanding. Kind of like Noland and Calgara, right? Back in Skypiea. They were both good people, but they simply had different observations at the way to go about things. And I think that is, you know, going to play a part in the Void Century. And so now the next comment, and probably the final one too, we're going to end it here. We might come back for part 2, but we'll see. But this one says, maybe Imu is tiny, and that is why the Straw Hat looks big to him. I don't think he's tiny. You know, obviously, like I said, sizing is kind of weird in One Piece, but he was holding bounty posters at one point, and the bounty posters looked regular size when they were holding it, and then there were also a bunch of swords right next to Imu, and Imu was taller than the swords, so I don't think Imu's tiny, but then again, all we have is a silhouette. You know, for all we know, Imu could be a short guy wearing stilts. He could be like that guy from Long Ring Longland, just with really big shoes that simply lift his ass up. But yeah, we have no idea. You know, I hate that I say that pretty often. You know, if you watch my videos, I always say, hey, we have no clue, or this is just a guess. But I think it's always important to say that, Because as a reader, you know, from my standpoint, I never want to make big, bold assumptions. I make a lot of predictions. Some of them, most of them, are wrong. But that's the point. You know, it's all about that conversation. You never want to close out every single door in front of you because you kind of start having that narrow mind of view. And then on top of that, I am a very solid advocate that as you get more information in the story and as more things develop, it's okay to change your opinion on things, right? You know, like today, I said that Joyboy is not a Buccaneer. You know, based on what I've seen, he's not one. But if we get more panels and more side-by-side comparisons, maybe I can change. But based on what we have right now, this is what I think. And yeah, I would love to hear all of your guys' comments down below. What do you think about this latest chapter now that you've had some time to sit down and rest with it? And what do you expect in the next one, right? We might do a prediction video for that one, and we'll probably be back during this break week, right? We got 7 days until the next chapter of One Piece, so we got some time to hang out. And yeah, we're not in a rush. I'll catch you guys later. My name is Sai, and I'm signing out. Oh, before that, though, quick shout-outs if you want to follow me on Twitter, link down below. Links to my Twitch account as well, where I play some random games on the side too, and all my other links. But yeah, peace out, guys.